We're not in a global financial panic right now. We may be heading for one. We talked about that separately. We're not in one right now. We are in a recession. It looks the U.S. is definitely in a recession right now. We had 2 consecutive quarters of decline in GDP, first quarter, second quarter. Well, that's a recession. We'll see what the third quarter is going to be, but it may be prolonged and it may get worse. Europe is in a recession, based on the latest data. Japan is in a recession. China looks like they're in a recession. They reported their most recent growth figures of 0.4% for the second quarter, not 4%, but 0.4% versus compound growth of over 10% for about 30 years. So, and they lie. So if they're admitting 0.4, then I have to believe that's negative. So we're really looking at a global recession. Now, a recession or even a depression, which it may turn into, is not the same as a financial panic. You can have panics without recessions. We saw that in 1998, 1987. You can have recessions without panics. We saw that in 1990 and 2020. Sometimes they do go together. 2008 was an example of both, a severe recession and a severe financial panic. But I would keep those separate, because if we're not in a global financial panic, then we don't necessarily have dollar buying because of get me out of everything else. The dollar generally does rally in a financial panic. That's correct. And it does so because people want the best assets they can find. They're like, the best description I've ever heard about financial panic is everybody wants his money back. It doesn't matter what you're in, get me out, sell it, whatever. I want dollars. Well, when you get the dollars, you got to go buy something. So you can leave it in the bank, but banks are risky. I mean, the problem in 2008 is the banks were failing, and that didn't quite happen in 2020, but it absolutely happened in 2008. So they buy treasury bills. They buy treasury notes. They're the safest assets. They may not want them for long, but you can buy a 2-year treasury note or a 6-month treasury bill. You're not in it that long, and your money's safe. So there is a demand for dollars somewhere around the world to buy that really good collateral because it looks like a safe haven relative to everything else that's falling apart. That's not exactly what's going on today, but it's related. But we are in a recession. Now, the recession should damp down the inflation. It hasn't yet. Inflation's high. There's no question about it. We see it in the data. You see it at the gas pump. You see it at the store. But that may trend a lot lower very quickly, but not for good reasons. In other words, you say, well, what's the Fed doing about inflation? Well, they really can't do anything about it. The inflation is coming from the supply side. The inflation can come from probably a lot of places, but 2 places in particular, supply side and the demand side. Supply side inflation is when there are shortages, there are bottlenecks, there's supply chain dysfunction, people run out of stuff, there's not enough fertilizer, not enough water, not enough truck drivers, ports are clogged, you can't get the input A to make item B, so you got to shut down assembly line because you can't get titanium from Russia to build Boeing aircraft. It's complex. It's huge. It's the subject of my next book, Sold Out, which is coming out in November. But supply chains are breaking down in many different respects. And prices go up as a result. But the other kind of inflation is called cost push inflation. The other kind of inflation is demand pull inflation. This is when consumers change their behavior. They get it in their heads like, hey, prices are going up. They're getting out of control. I better go out and buy that thing, And this is what we lived through in the 1970s. And I remember very well. If you were going to buy a refrigerator, a new car, a dishwasher, whatever, you'd say to yourself, I better go buy it today, because if I wait 3 months, it's going to be higher. Or 6 months, it's going to be a lot higher. So of course, that just pulls demand forward. And it creates excess demand relative to supply, and then prices do go up, and it feeds on itself. Next thing you know, bosses are handing out raises because of inflation, people just spend more, et cetera. So the Fed can do something about demand pull inflation. They can destroy demand by raising interest rates, raising mortgage rates, credit card rates, and everything else. They can't do anything about supply inflation, the supply chain inflation, cost push inflation. They can't do anything about it. The Fed doesn't drill for oil. The Fed doesn't drive a truck. The Fed doesn't run a cargo line. The Fed doesn't mine, titanium in Russia. They can't do anything about any of those things. So, then you get into, is it really inflation? Well, inflation means prices are going up, but if they're going up for that reason, two things are true. One, the Fed can't do anything about it. Two, it will probably run its own course in the sense that, if prices go higher, there's going to be a lot less discretionary income. You still got to put gas in your car and you still got to put food on the table. If those two things have doubled in price, and they have, then you have that much less left over for everything else. You'll say, well, I'm going to skip the vacation, skip the concert, skip the restaurant, skip a lot of things, new furniture, whatever. I'm not going to buy any of those things because all my money is going to buy gas and food. So you still get the gas and food, but not more. You just pay more, and the value of your dollar goes down, real wages go down, and you're not spending money on anything else. That'll put the economy in a recession real fast. That's happening.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information, and it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.